And hey, everybody. Well, you haven't opened up the chat. I don't know if they can hear us or not. Oh, you did? Oh, okay. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to a special edition of the ASEA 5. I think we're going to be something like the ASEA 10 tonight. So hang on to your hats because this is going to be amazing. You know the regulars. I'm Dr. Maureen Hayes from Galveston, Texas, and I'm joined by Jim and Ann Glenn from San Antonio, Texas. Jim is our big money man, and his wife Ann is our nutritionist and personal trainer. And we also have Dr. Lee Osler, dentist extraordinaire from Washington State, and author of the two probably best-selling books, at least best-selling in ASEA, Redox Matters and Healthy Matters. And I understand he might be working on a third, so that could be pretty exciting. We'll have to wait and see. And we have an incredible lineup for you tonight, because what we're doing is we're merging medical people as well as elite athletes. So we're going to be interviewing some people. Rose Monday, who is the head coach for the women's track team for the Olympics. She has a couple of her athletes here, Kendra and Luca, and also Tom Beasley, who was a former Super Bowl hero, back with the Steelers and also with the Washington team as well. Who cares about them? Steelers Nation all the way. Has a couple of Super Bowl rings. So we're going to be talking about redox signaling molecules. And if you don't know what that is, that's a new field of science. It's only been around for a couple of decades now. And it basically is how our cells communicate with each other. And this company has developed a technology that allows us to replenish these molecules, because as we get older, as we all hope to do every day, we lose some of these molecules that come from our little mitochondria, the little power cells in our powerhouses in our cells. We lose about 10% of those mitochondria every decade after puberty. It's all downhill from there. And so, if you've ever wondered why your DNA stays the same, but you don't look the same at 50 as you did at 20 or 30, and you certainly don't feel the same, has to do a lot with an imbalance or a deficit of these molecules. And so our company has figured out a way for us to replenish these in our cells so that our bodies work better and they heal faster, and it helps with athletic performance. And so that's why we have these elite athletes on here today to talk a little bit about this. Now, we're at well, I'm not at Rose Mondays, but there's a whole group at Rose Monday's house in San Antonio, and she's kind of our hostess for this evening. And I was going to start with her, but Tom Beasley, who's in West Virginia, is having internet problems. So we're going to bring him on. Oh, and there's Jerry White. He's one of our mentors. He is a head physical therapist, or was a head physical therapist for the Shriners Hospital in Washington State, and was a coach at the Olympic level. So he spans both. He's an athlete in his own right as well. So kind of has both of those things going on. So he just brings a wealth of information. So we're going to kind of round robin here and talk a little bit to each of the people, to hear their stories, hear why they're involved with this company, what they see, what they're experiencing, and why they're sharing it with other people. So Tom, we're going to bring you on, Super Bowl hero. Why don't you tell us a little bit, give us a little bit about your background, and tell us how you got introduced to ASEA, to the redox signaling molecules, and what you have experienced with them. I know you have some pretty interesting stories, some involving cows. So, share with us what you feel inspired.
Very good, Maureen. Good to see and be on the phone with you. And we've been having some internet problems, so hopefully it'll last through this call. Basically, I grew up in southern West Virginia. I currently live in Virginia, in the southwestern corner of the state of Virginia, in a little community called Hiltons, Virginia. And I do have a history of and background in football. I played 10 years in the NFL, 7 years with Pittsburgh, and my last 3 seasons with the Redskins. And 2 of those years while at Pittsburgh were able to go to and win both Super Bowls in 78 and 79. As you well know, football comes with some bumps and bruises, and I certainly had my fair share of those. As you mentioned earlier, some altercations with Angus bulls and cows and Appaloosa mares and the host of things there. Plus, I'm very active. I've over the years have bicycle. That's what I my knees can't tolerate the pounding anymore. So I've been biking a lot, and I've had a couple altercations with dogs. I hit a couple dogs with my bicycle and had some injuries there. But bottom line is, over the years, most of these were football related, but I have had 27 different fractures. I've separated both shoulders. I dislocated my right wrist, right toe. I've had 5 surgeries, and I can tell you today I'm living a life that essentially is without any discomfort whatsoever. And it amazes me. I see some of the guys that I had an opportunity to play ball with. Some of them only played for 3 and 4 years. The average when I played was 3.2 years. And these guys are, some of them are just struggling physically. And so I've been really blessed. I was stumbled across ASEA actually several years ago. At the time, my 87-year-old father had a problem with a blood clot, and it went to his brain, and he went south from there. He didn't recognize any family. He was just in a bad place. And out of desperation, the third night that he was in the hospital there, out of desperation, I called Jerry White, who I'd known for about 20 years at the time. And I told him what had happened to my father. And I said, is there anything out there that might assist him? And Jerry said, Tom, you got to get him on ASEA, and the sooner the better. And so how do I get it? And we ordered the next morning. I started my dad. The product came in on day 10 after his problem. I started my dad on day 11. And for the first 3 days, we saw really no change whatsoever. But on that 4th day, about midway through the 4th day of him being on the product, he came out of it. And my dad, about 10 or 11 years prior to this, was struggling with a thing called vascular dementia. And we just saw some significant changes, improvements actually in that after all this was, after ASEA was introduced. So that's how I discovered ASEA. And since that time, I certainly thought it was a great idea for my wife and I to get on the product. Shared it with my brothers. And we take it every day. So it's been a blessing for us and my family. And it's made a significant difference in the quality of my life, having played that many years of football.
Yeah, I love that, Tom. And I've heard it said that had you known about this product back when you were still playing, that you feel like you probably could have played more years.
Absolutely, and been more productive. Maureen, as an athlete, my first, second year of playing, physically, I felt as if I could recover from a game in 2 days. I felt as if I could play every other day. And my last year, my last 2 or 3 years, it was midday Thursday before I got over and recovered from, a Sunday afternoon football game. And I'm 68 now. And one of the problems that aging athletes have is if they stay active and do a lot of things, and my biggest thing has been cycling, we just don't recover from whether it's an injury or whether it's also certainly from exerting ourselves physically. So I have seen a significant change in how my body's ability is to recover from a few years ago, I was riding about 175 miles a week. Now I've been riding roughly close to 100. So people at the age of 68 really just don't recover that quickly from exerting themselves physically. And I've tried it with and without ASEA. There's a night and day difference when I'm on a product, and I suffer when I don't. So it's been a blessing for us.
Yeah. I think we all think that. Dr. Lee, would you mind giving the disclaimer? Probably should have said that earlier.
Yeah, I would love to. What we're talking about is a supplement. It's made by a cellular health company. It goes by the name of ASEA Global. We're in 33 countries. But within this country, in the United States, where we're based, this is approved as a supplement. It's not a drug. It's not a diagnosis. It's not a treatment. It's not therapy. This is a supplement that replenishes signaling molecules that the cell and the mitochondria normally make, but which we make less of. So we're real clear to stipulate that this is not about treating or diagnosing or approaching any disease in that regard, although it helps many.
Love that. Thank you, Lee. Rose, would you like to come on and kind of give us a little bit more about your background, what you're doing now, and then if you wouldn't mind introducing your elite athletes to us, that'd be fantastic. Kendra and Luca.
Sure. I'm Rose Monday, and I'm a 3-time Olympic coach. I was the head coach in 2020. I'm also head of women's track and field, and I'm a personal coach. And I was introduced to ASEA in 2017. July 4th is when I started taking it. And I had all kinds of issues going on that stemmed from a ruptured appendix in Korea in 2011 that had gone sepsis, and 5 days later had surgery. And if I thought I felt bad then, it continued to get worse over the years. And Kendra can attest to it. I wasn't coaching Luca at the time, but Kendra can attest that I couldn't lift my arms above my head. I was getting cortisone shots in my shoulders, and I know better. I was told in my 30s that I had, bone on bone then. I raced well into my 40s. And they said that you will have knee replacement when you're 50, definitely. I have something called patella alta. And the femur is here, the patella is here, it's up high and over here, and there's just nothing in between. So I was also alternating between cortisone shots in my knees and Synvisc to help try to rebuild the cartilage. I had issues with my legs. They said it was not neuropathy, but felt like it. I had to foam roll my legs every night in the middle of the night for years, through 2017, because they just ached. I went through Costco jugs of Advil, and all of this as a coach, knowing sports and being an athlete my whole life, I know better not to do all of these things, but I was in tremendous pain. And Kendra can explain, to come onto the track, they had to carry my cones, cones, like those orange cones that you put at the different spots, and my backpack. I could not carry that into the track. My husband, had to help me put a bra on. He thought that was fun. Okay, I didn't. All right, I'm just saying. So the final straw was I ended up getting TMJ, and that's how I ended up finding out about it. I went to my children's orthodontist, and that's when she said, you need to have all of your athletes on ASEA. And I said, okay, I'm not putting my athletes on anything, but I'm willing to try it. I'm at my wit's end. So I started taking it July 4th of 2017. And I didn't take what it says on the bottle, 2 ounces in the morning, 2 ounces at night. I was actually advised by Jerry White, I met him at that time, Jim, to take more than that because of the physical issues I was having. And so I started taking 4 ounces 3 times a day. And within 4 days, July 8th, I was in Park City. I had actually stopped by the ASEA headquarters on the way to get some that I was taking to Europe with me, because after this wedding, I was going to Europe with my athletes for 6 weeks. And in 4 days, everything stopped. Okay. No shoulder pain, the jaw, which was killing me for like 3 months, my knees, which I couldn't kneel down to get a ball underneath the bed for the dog. Everything disappeared. It wasn't even like it was gradual, like, oh, it's a 7 and then a 5. No, gone. So I swear by. Now, I'll just have to say that not everybody that happens to. It might take them a month depending on what's going on. I mean, I ate very healthfully, and I think that being said, I was very active my whole life. Even with all this pain, I still am coaching and active. And so I swear by, I will never stop. And I was very fortunate. I wish I would have, like Tom, been able to have this advantage of this when I was an athlete, because it does help you recover really fast. It does help. In fact, last year with, I'll give examples of each one and then they can talk. But last year, Luca pulled his hamstring in practice, and it was in the indoor season. It was supposed to race on Saturday, and we canceled it because he pulled his hamstring. And anyone knows you pull a hamstring injury, Jerry can attest, it takes a while for that to heal. And he had been taking ASEA, he had put the Renew 28 on it several times. And later on that night, he said, is it still okay if I race next weekend? And I'm like, okay, pick up the phone. He texted me. I go, Luca, what's going on with your hamstring? And he says, Coach, it feels okay. And he did race 10 days later. And I have to say, I've never seen a hamstring injury heal like that. Like, he couldn't cool down, you guys. He could not cool down. So, Kendra, what I noticed with her is, she has exercise-induced asthma. And if it's very cold or very hot, she has a really hard time with workouts and goes anaerobic much quicker. And so many times, with her on ASEA on a regular basis, all of a sudden hills in this very cold day, windy, cars driving by, exhaust, all the things that would cause her to be, going into a full-blown asthma attack, have to sit down on the side of the road and cars stopping, asking if she's okay and looking at me like I'm a crazy woman, making her do this hill repeats. She was just killing the workout. Another one of my athletes, Dana, I tested her out in the very beginning. She wasn't sponsored by ASEA, but what we found with Dana was more of a distance runner coming to, and I want Jerry to talk about this later from a medical perspective, but she came to the 800 more from a 5,000 meter, 1,500 strength, where Kendra's 400, 200, 400 to the 800. And so she's an aerobic animal. And if I give her an anaerobic workout, which is without oxygen, so it's speed with very little short recovery, she'll be sore for 5 days after that workout. So, I'm giving her ASEA, and she was able to recover right away. And normally she'd be so sore, her quads and hams would be very heavy from that anaerobic workout, and she recovered. And we found that from a ventilatory response, and they'll have to talk about the science behind it, but I noticed that they go, in middle distance, you got to have the speed of a sprinter and the endurance of a distance runner. So you have to train, and it's arguably so 65% of it is anaerobic. So very fast stuff with very short recovery. And what the 800 is you get into the 800 meters, and 500 meters into the race is when you start to go into a different energy substrate. You start to go into anaerobic energy. And then you still have 300 meters to go, which I describe it as booty lock, blurred vision big time, because the clock is ticking. You can feel that lactic acid pouring in. And what's happening with these guys is they're going into that much later. It'd be maybe 700 meters into the race, where the last 100 meters they're feeling that, or they don't even feel it until they finish. But that to me is like phenomenal. And so maybe Jerry or Maureen can talk about how that that phenomenon.
Yeah, I'd love to bring Jerry on, because he can talk a little bit about it and about the studies that were done at the Appalachian Human Performance Lab. But it's interesting, Rose, when you first were telling your story and somebody said, you need to get all your athletes on it, you were like, I'm not putting my athletes on this. And now you're listing the athletes that are on it. So obviously something changed, I guess, when you had your great.
Well, I had to find out, they're drug tested all the time, and I wouldn't even give them an Advil, because if for some reason they tested positive, I don't want my name or me linked to anybody testing positive. The drug legislation that we have in this country, I drafted back in the early 90s. I'm, a drug-free coach. But I didn't know. And I remember Dr. Flannery said, Rose, it doesn't have anything. It's innate to what our body produces. It's not anything that is toxic. It's not anything that is pharmaceutical. So when I found out that, yeah, absolutely, I wanted them on it. And I won't ever stop taking ASEA. It's been over 5.5 years.
Fantastic. I love it. Jerry, do you want to kind of go over the science? You can explain it from an athletic standpoint.
Well, we have such limited time, but thank you all for being here. It's a very, very, very exciting experience for all of you to get to see this. As you can tell, each of us as coaches are looking at this like, whoa, we've never seen anything like this. It's like the discovery of something that was missing and nobody knew what that something was. So what we can do is apply a little bit of science to this. And first off, it is safe and it's allowed. And those are really, really, really big things. I'm also a coach that was, as an athlete myself, one of those that tried way harder than many and way too much for me. And so I would consistently break down over time. The first time I ever used this was in my early 60s, and I guess late 50s, and training after all those years, still swimming hard and doing triathlons and that sort of thing. And all of a sudden I dropped heart rate on faster repeats. So 10 beats a minute slower, but I was going 4 seconds faster per 100. So I'm thinking, that's nuts. And through that process, started to imagine what on earth is going on. Well, there was a study done right around the time that I was first taking a look at this at Appalachian State University that discovered something very, very interesting. And there's many of these pages we can open. If all of you get really interested, we'll get back to you on it. But this particular study took a group of cyclists that were going to cycle 70 kilometers, and they were all in their the early 20s. And they took blood samples before, and then at the onset, during, and then after, and did a crossover double-blind placebo-controlled study on what the heck is happening here if you take ASEA. So they were drinking about 8 ounces of it. And the surprise on the researchers came back saying, what's interesting here is that for the first time since puberty, these athletes are making a series of fatty acids to burn during the burn cycle and the Krebs cycle of the aerobic capacity. They're doing it like they were when they were young. And if you all think back if this is a bunch of athletes here, that first couple of years when you were in junior high or high school and you started doing double workouts, or even later when you did double workouts, and you'd be so painful 2 days later you could hardly crawl on your lips. Well, that was never experienced by a little kid. And little kids have this metabolic capability of burning fats first and sugars later. And this particular study showed that if you gave these 20-year-olds this ASEA, they would then have the available broken down fats into fatty acids. And there's some real advantage to that. The first thing is that it's the fat molecule is 60 times more energy dense than a sugar molecule. We also know if you're starting and you're burning your lactate reserve, your muscle glycogen reserves, that sugar in your muscles at the beginning of a race, you don't have it left for the end of the race. Not only that, but if you're burning it anaerobically at the beginning to get started, you're carrying an acid load throughout the whole race. Talk about getting booty lock, and your body is actually fighting its own resistance. It's that sense where when you want to speed up and you feel like your life just got switched to living in peanut butter, you go very slow and there's nothing you can do. And you look at your competition and your eyes are rolling in the back of your head. You got nothing in the tank and the peanut butter just sets in. What if you had two athletes side by side and one was burning more efficiently, burning these amino acids, and had that muscle glycogen in reserve? You watch the finish. So we got lots of stories we can tell about that, but it was a radical change in how we looked at how athletes work. And just a quick story on one of the athletes that gave me that impression. This guy was trying to break the world record in the indoor mile. And when I first got a hold of him, he was training so hard at age 50 or 48. He was trying to chase this elusive 4:21. In indoors, it's twice as many laps. It can't go quite as fast. And so that was what the world record was for all these years. But every time he attempted to do it, he would, in this particular season, he tore his quads twice, broke his foot once, got 2 bouts of pneumonia in the same season. So coaches, did it seem like he was under-recovering? So then we said, okay, let's try something. Let's get you on 8 ounces of this a day and see if your body can figure out its own way of doing some better recovery. Well, it turns out that a couple months later, he hadn't had any more injuries. That was nice. went after that 421 that he'd been chasing for years, and he kept breaking at 424, and he ran a 416. Age-related, one of the fastest indoor miles ever run by a human being, and never got hurt. And you know what the secret he told me later? He said he had doubled his training mileage when he started on 8 ounces. So all this stuff really started me thinking in 1,000 different directions. As we look at ASEA, it is well tested in practical application. It's tested in the laboratories, but most importantly, tested on yourself. And we want to just set this small little group together to begin to start to say, we're looking at each other saying, really? Did you know this? No, we didn't know this. This is brand new, and we're about ready to take off with it. So thanks for taking the time to be with us, and I'll pass it back to you, Maureen, and we'll schedule some cool stuff in the future and talk about the real intricate details.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you, Jerry. Thank you for that explanation. And now we're going to talk to some, of the younger people on, and I love that I've been included with the elite athletes. I've always sort of fancied myself an athlete. I was a high school cheerleader, so that's something. Anyway, Kendra, that's right. I could do splits and everything, so I was quite accomplished. Kendra, come on and talk to us about what you have experienced. I can't believe that you're an Olympic runner with cold-induced and heat-induced asthma. That's just going to be crazy. And again, it's not a medical. We're not a medical company. It's not a medical product. We're not here to treat, cure, prevent, diagnose anything, but our product does help the cells to talk to each other better, helps us to heal better, have better stamina, better outcomes. So Kendra, tell us about this. What are you experiencing? Because you're young, you're not all that beat up yet. And yet, to have this now, and you've heard, Rose Monday and Tom Beasley both talk about they wish they had it when they were younger. And here you are.
Yes, absolutely. And Rose definitely was spot on. As soon as she tried it and saw the benefits, she brought it to our team and was like, you guys have to try this. So I must admit, I was a little skeptical at first, but anything Rose says, I was like, I trust it. It's going to be great. So as I started to take it, as she said, I have exercise-induced asthma. So basically, if it's really humid outside or really cold, but it was really the wind that would usually get me. And I just couldn't breathe. And if I can't breathe, I can't run. And that's like the best description of what I felt was really in my throat was just like closing. So I had to stop. And so after I was taking ASEA and after I was really consistent with it, that was the key, was the consistency piece. I stopped using my inhaler. I haven't actually ordered an inhaler since maybe 2 years ago. The one I have in my bag is expired because I don't use it anymore. And to say that, I've also increased my mileage since I've been with Rose. I started out with her and I could barely jog a couple miles. I was a sprinter at heart, and I really needed to adapt to the middle distance that my body needed to adapt to, and I was struggling. So not only was I behind in mileage, I was using an inhaler and I was just out of shape. Once I started to use ASEA again consistently, it was like night and day. I haven't used my inhaler at all. I don't need it anymore. If I do get out of breath, it's not as severe, and I've been able to basically double the amount of mileage that I did in 2017 up to this point. And so, yeah, I can't say enough about the product. The recovery piece is also really important to me. With the Renew 28, as well as the Redox drink, it's again night and day. I laugh because I just wish I could explain it better. My body just is a completely different body. When we have really hard repeats or when we sprint a lot and my hamstrings are aching, I also have bone cartilage on my right knee. And I put Renew 28 on my right knee probably every day, and especially before and after practice. And I don't have the same pain that I had before. They've told me several times that I need to get surgery on my shins. I have really bad shin splints typically when I switch shoes and I switch surfaces. So there's a lot of surfaces we cover in track and field. And as a pro athlete, we can be on asphalt, we can be on grass, we can be on the track, and then we have different shoes. We can be in flats, we can be in spikes. So my shins have just taken a hit. Ever since I was in high school, I've struggled with shin splints, and using Renew 28 on them every day, massaging it into my calves again, it's night and day results for me. And I think I can attest and agree with Rose that there's no way that I'm stopping ASEA. It would change my career. And so from this point on, I'm definitely going to use ASEA for the rest of my career and probably for the rest of my life. I've seen nothing but great results, and I'm really excited to be a part of the team.
Hey, Kendra, real quick, how much are you drinking a day when you do a normal routine? And then also when you compete, do you up what you take?
Yes. So I'm probably drinking between 6 and 8 ounces a day. And then on race day, it's probably 10 to 12 because I am just like hyper focused. And I typically don't eat as much on race day till after the race. So I'm definitely getting in a lot of fluids.
Kendra, do you mind if I ask how old you are?
Yes, of course. I'm 32 years old. So yeah, I've been to 2 Olympic trials so far in 2016 and then also in 2021.
You look like you're in your 20s.
Thank you. That's the skincare.
It's good stuff. That's fabulous. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah. And I think all of us agree that once you get started on this and once you start having the benefits, you don't want to give that up. You know, not everybody values it the same and not everybody has extreme response to it, like some of the people on this call or some of the stories that we've heard. But, you know, it's absolutely amazing. So, yeah, I think we'll all be on it for the long haul. So, Luca, come on and tell us your story.
Hi, well, thank you for having me on. Just to kind of add to what Kendra was saying, she said she was able to handle more mileage. So I'm coming from the endurance background from college. So my body had to adjust to the intensity of Rose's workouts. So basically the intensity, I had to handle the intensity versus the mileage. So using the Renew 28 before and after practice really helped kind of improve my confidence in my own body, you know, just having confidence and being prepared to handle those higher intensities kind of eliminates the stress and the worry that can also lead to injuries. So yeah, I started using Renew 28 in the summer of 2020 when I was dealing with the minor tweak in my hamstring. And then I started using Renew 28 and it helped out a lot. And then as Rose mentioned, in this past March, I had an issue with my hamstring and I was ready to go the next week. So yeah, it's done a lot of really good things in my workouts and my training. It's allowed me to train stress-free of having an injury, which is huge in pro athletics. So
that's a really interesting aspect that I really hadn't thought about. So do you use it prophylactically? Do you rub down your legs with the Renew before you go out and run?
I do. I make sure to apply it on clean skin, take a little shower before, practice, and apply it 3 times within 5 minutes, around 30 minutes before the actual workout. And it does help out a lot as far as stretching me out, just makes me feel more warmed up. And then, of course, I use it after the workout for recovery as well. So.
Hey, Jerry, how long would it take to recover from that kind of an injury that Luca had? And I remember being actually here at Rose's house when you were here. But how long typically would it take to recover from that, Jerry? Or
it's
Rose?
The biggest factor in that is what I call carpenter syndrome, and your most devoted people have it real bad. That means if you hit your thumb with a hammer, it heals a lot better if you quit hitting it with a hammer. So you go after it just as it's starting to fix itself. So you got to have a little bit of common sense in all of this. But those kinds of speeds and the kind of workouts that they're doing, it really is very, very sensitive, and probably 3 weeks to a month before you can really get back to that kind of full-on load typically. And you
Yeah.
got to be careful building up to it too, because you'll just start all over again
Right.
every time.
Mhm.
I agree. I pulled my hamstring twice, actually 3 times in my career. And it took about 8 weeks. And of course you build up with endurance slower. Like for instance, I'm able to run, 13 seconds, 12 seconds for 100. And then all of a sudden I can't run 25 seconds for 100 to save my life because of the injury. So you run to the point of it hurting and building up. You have to rebuild up that endurance. But back when I was their age, it took 6, 8 weeks, 10 weeks before I was able to race and not feel that hamstring at the top of, your piriformis. And so it does take a long time, Jim. And like Jerry said, it's a gradual progression. It's all about adaptation, right? It's the adaptation to the stress of the energy systems, of the demands of the event. And if you have an injury, it's the same type of principle. It's adaptation to a little bit and then a little bit more and a little bit more and doing everything right to get that hamstring back. And the other problem is we all know when you have something wrong, everything around it protects it. So his hamstring is strained, but guess what else? His glute is not firing right. The quad's not firing right because they're trying to protect that hamstring. So making sure you're doing, very diligent on doing your neuromuscular rehabilitation exercises to make sure those you fire those muscles so that it takes all the load off of that hamstring.
That's an excellent point. And one of the things that's most exciting as we peel back some of the onion and we start to look at new pages of what this is doing is the ideas that the muscle fibers, we know take about 8 weeks to replace a muscle fiber, but you've also got to give it the right amount of suggestion that we better change. That's what resistive exercise is all about. And as we get deeper and deeper into the studies, and certainly Lee Osler's helped us to get deeper on the molecular level, how does the cell get the information in the first place that we need to do this much repair in this way for this kind of an activity? We didn't know that before. And it turns out that this redox signaling is critical to how the genes within the DNA within the cell is monitoring those changes. And then how does it give the signals to do this kind of a change and adapt to that degree? And it all turns out to be related to this language called redox signaling. The fun part is you don't have to know all the details because you just use it the same way. You let the body have the informational tools to share this information rapidly back and forth, to start, to stop, to finish, to develop, to say, where are we? And that is remarkable. So we can kind of puff up our chests like little chickens when we have great responses with our athletes, but their body is actually figuring it out and doing things that will take us 1,000 years to figure out how to do that. Or we could just give them ASEA and this body talks to itself and off it goes and fixes it.
Yeah, I want to bring Mr. Beasley back up. Is that okay, Maureen?
Yeah, I was just going to have.
Hey.
I was just going to have Dr. Lee talk a little bit about turning on the inner doctor.
Okay, but then I want to hear about the cow.
Of course.
Tom,
We have
Go
to
ahead,
have a
Lee.
talk.
I got to have a talk about the cow.
We call that the mad cow disease or something. I don't know. That'll be a fun story to hear. This has been such an enlightening conversation to hear from some real world athletes who are demonstrating, what we're talking about at this molecular level. And really what we're addressing here is how cells regulate themselves. We call it the redox regulatory circuit. And it's really about how does a cell know it's in trouble and what does it do in response to that trouble? And how does it survive and become stronger? This is extending into many different arenas nowadays, even into anti-aging, because this is about how you turn on the cell's defense or repair circuits so that it can become stronger and so forth. These molecules are made in the mitochondria. That's why this discussion of energy production and ATP and these and how you burn glucose or fatty acids and so forth is such an important one, because it's in that power plant of the mitochondria that these redox molecules are made natively in the body. And for decades, we've looked at them almost as the villain. These oxidants we need to put the fire out by taking antioxidant, vitamins and eating right, because we don't want them. Well, in truth, that's only partially true, because in the body, this is how we signal. And it's not a drug paradigm. It's not a lock and key. It's not a receptor site paradigm. It's more of a cascading signaling. This is what tells the DNA what to do in response to stress. And certainly exercise is a stress in the cell. We're increasing oxidative stress. And when we instruct the DNA what to do about that and do it in a timely fashion, it then has the ability to flex or shift into a different modality. And what that modality is, which Jerry kind of alluded to earlier, is this shift into beta oxidation of fatty acids. That's much more energy efficient. It produces more energy within the cell, and it spares the use of glucose as a metabolite or an energy source. And so I can keep that glycogen, I can keep that glucose on reserve while I have a predilection for burning fatty acids, which obviously comes from triglycerides. And so I can utilize that, and the requirements to carb load, the energy requirements for metering out how I burn energy through an event changes, and it shifts to a different strategy if I have the ability to tell the cell to shift to fatty acid metabolism. And then the recovery side of this, we're healing, we're recovering, because I'm not building up this lactose, this different insult to the cell. It doesn't happen. And so I can recover quicker and get on to the next event. I can also induce quicker recovery through quicker repair and healing, because I'm actually telling the cells to repair. This whole healing concept in the body of turning on the inner doctor, I call it. It's switching it on so that it can do what it does best by stimulating stem cells and repair cells, and the cellular renewal, the DNA repair. All of this becomes activated when I address this through redox signaling. So that, in a nutshell, comes at this exercise stuff from a metabolic point of view, because I'm shifting the metabolomics of a cell to preferentially favor everything we've been talking about.
You ought to write a book, dude.
Okay, now we're going to bring it back down to our level.
Yeah.
And Mr. Beasley, now you've been prone to have a couple of accidents. Can you share us? Because it's a story of recovery. Do you mind sharing what happened real quick?
With the cow incident, sure. Basically, I had just pulled a calf from a cow, and she was a 1,200-pound cow, and this cow, the calf was actually dead prior to even starting to extract it. We got it out, and this was her first calf. So I actually took the calf and put it out in front of her, turned her out of a head gate, and she went up to the cow, and I wanted her to have the experience of licking it and doing her thing. So long story short, she took a big breath in and went crazy. She started stomping this calf, butting it up in the air, trying to throw it up in the air. So we ran her off. Long story short, I got in front of her. She was about 30 yards from me. I got in front of her, and she charged me. And I took off running. First time she hit me, she broke 3 ribs. She literally threw me about 6-8 feet. And after that, I had a white shirt on, and I had a pair of maroon shorts on. Once she got me on the ground, the only place that she stomped me with her front hooves, the only place she stomped me was on those shorts. And as a result of that, I had, the doctors told me I had 60% of my ab muscles torn loose from my pelvis. And what wasn't torn loose was crushed or severely bruised. I had a 2-inch diagonal fracture in my pelvis, and I had 2 invulsion fractures. An invulsion fracture is basically where the meat, where the muscle attaches to the bone, it pulls chunks of bone loose from the main bone. So I had 3 different doctors telling me that it would take me 6 months before I would be able to get out of bed pain-free. And almost to the day, six weeks later, I jumped back on my bike. I went for a 25-mile bike ride, 100% pain-free. So just incredible recovery from a pretty intense injury.
Now, Tom, how much were you drinking at that time and applying the gel?
Oh my goodness. The first 4 days, I was drinking 32 ounces a day. And then the next 6 days, I drank 16 ounces a day. And then after that, I was drinking anywhere from 8 to 12 ounces a day.
Now, Maureen, if you saw someone like that in your office that had that kind of an injury, what would you have said?
That would
Besides
just
pray
be
for him.
Yeah, just remarkable. I also, my heart goes out to the cow too,
Who cares about the cow?
I didn't mean that. Tom, I didn't mean that. I meant
What the heck with you, Tom?
But no, it's just unfathomable that, 6 weeks later you could be out on your
I care about the cow. Somebody else said, okay, who's the cow?
You don't have an animal lover. The poor thing, it was a mom and her baby, but I'm sorry, Tom, that she got.
I grew up on a farm, so I think different. Sorry.
Yeah, I guess I just never really thought, about cows and their babies before, but yeah, that's absolutely incredible. And it's amazing, and you are quite a testimony, Tom, just with everything that you've been through, with your body being just sort of battered, not just being an athlete, not the runners, you guys are doing a lot of stress on your body, but the constant pounding. And of course, we have heard so much with especially football players, and that constant pounding of the head and the hits and the repeated hits and how that affects people and their cognition. And can you speak to that at all? Have you noticed any benefit with ASEA for that?
I have, and actually, and it's been 2.5, 3 years ago. I was scheduled to have some testing done, and I knew that ASEA would skew my results. So I made a conscious decision to come off ASEA 2.5, 3 months prior to this test. And I got to say, Maureen, my wife, Margie, I scared her to death because I was just, I was having some significant short-term memory issues. I very quickly became so explosive. I mean, I'd blown up over little things with grandchildren, my kids, with her, bless her heart. But I saw some things that it certainly scared me as well. And I get back on product after this test was done, and within 2 weeks, I'm back to my new normal. And I just saw significant changes in how it impacted my cognitive function, no doubt.
Wow, that's amazing. So I imagine you're a lifer too. So you youngsters, listen to this. Now, it's a big thing you're on it now. If you're like our swimmers, we had Olympic swimmers who used to say they would drink it out of brown paper bags when they were at their meet so that the other swimmers wouldn't know what they had. So you might be trying to keep it as a racer's edge, but it's fantastic. And it's so incredible that athletes of all of your caliber are on here talking about this, sharing it with people. Because, like my story, when I first heard about it as a physician, I thought it sounded ridiculous. Salt water from Salt Lake City. I live on an island surrounded by salt water. I really didn't think that it had much to offer. And to this day, I cannot tell you why we got started on the product. But it has made such an amazing difference for my family's health, for my husband's health, who had a life-threatening illness that he had recovered from, but the treatment left him very compromised. And, just watching that and the few people that I shared it with who had amazing results. Like we said, not everybody does. But you know what? For a lot of people, it's the answer to prayer. And it's not magic, it's physiology. Dr. Lee is the same way. You can tell how analytical he is. He had to do an incredibly deep dive in order to be comfortable, not just with him taking it and his family member and his beloved wife taking it, but to be able to share it with other people. So, thank you all for coming on. Any last words? Would anybody like to share more or tell a story?
Could I ask Rose? Rose, when you're talking, could you expand it beyond Kendra and Luca? And it's like, what else is going on in the athletic world that you're involved in? Other athletes. I mean, you don't have to tell the stories, but like, is it just Kendra and Luca, or is there more?
There's some other track and field athletes, but they don't know about it as much as I feel like I'm the only one telling them about it. The cyclists, swimmers, triathletes, it's pretty big in that world, not as much in track and field. So it's like all of us getting the word out, I mean, it's a phenomenal product. And I forgot to mention when I was talking before that for over a decade, my endocrinologist would always say to me, watch your blood sugar level. Watch it. And I'm like, watch my blood sugar. And he said, yeah, you're borderline, diabetic. And I'm thinking, I don't even eat sugar. I'm a salt person, but I do eat sugar, but I don't eat it like watch it. I don't eat desserts or things like that. So I'll have to say, ever since ASEA, my blood sugar levels are normal. And I think what was happening was my body was so inflamed, causing all of the pain that I was going through, which I am like Tom, I'm pain free. I can do handstands on the driveway with my athletes. They can attest to that. I can, sprint across the infield to get their splits. And there's a couple things I can't do. Lunges don't feel good on my knees, but going up and down stairs, kneeling, I have no problems, so I don't do lunges. I don't know, I think there's very few things I can't do physically. But I'm the Advil, I might have, a little bottle of it at home, just that I take on trips just in case. I have a glass of red wine and it gives me a headache. Otherwise, I don't even need Advil or any kind of pain medication. So I'm very, very thankful for the product.
Hey, Kendra, what would you tell athletes, either wannabe athletes or competitive athletes, high schoolers? What would you tell them? Why should they take a look at this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, before ASEA, I mean, like Rose said, you try to list all the things that you're going to try to do. It's going to be expensive treatment. It's going to be taking pills that do damage to your liver, probably. It's going to be seeing doctors on end and then giving you kind of the runaround treatment. And for me, I don't even think I really had asthma, to be honest. I think something else was going on. And because I decided to use ASEA, that's no longer, I don't have a problem with breathing and my asthma anymore. So I would just say, like, to any athletes that's just, on the fence maybe, or doesn't know about ASEA, please research it, do your homework, and that way you feel comfortable using the product, but you need it. It's a game changer, and it will increase your recovery, which is basically being an athlete. Recovery is being an athlete. If you can't recover, you can't be the best athlete. And for me, it's like I have to take my recovery very serious. And so I definitely think that any athlete who is hearing about ASEA or wants to try it, or if you know of an athlete, this is a game changer, and it will only help you get better at your everyday practice and at your big competitions.
Tom and Jerry, what would you say to the athletes as they age? What would be your advice to them, Tom, and then you, Jerry?
Jim, if you want to pursue your athleticism as you age, I think it's critical that we're assisting the body, because the body loses the capacity to recover with age. And ASEA restores that in a way that I've not witnessed it by any other product that's out there.
And
Isn't it kind of frightful to think about not being without it, Tom?
Prefer not
Right?
to. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you would
Margie
turn into
has a whole
1,200
stock
pound
room
cow
full
in
of
a
it.
hurry.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jerry.
He would turn into a 1,200-pound cow in a hurry.
You know what? After talking,
And we all love cows now.
I'm going to get some Renew 28 and find that cow and put it on her hooves.
Aw.
My body might have bruised her hooves up a little bit, and I'm concerned about that.
Yeah, so her hooves will recover. I was just thinking that it probably would have calmed her down to give her some ASEA. Not that you were thinking about it while you were being stomped alive, but next time maybe.
Maybe.
Well,
I did give my dog ASEA because he had torn his ACL and they recommended surgery $4,000. And this was about 4 months before the Olympics. And they said the rehab is going to take a long time. He'll probably tear his other ACL. Don't have him on hardwood floors. My house is hardwood floors. Keep him in a crate. That dog would never go in a crate. So I decided to rehab him myself. So I put the Renew 28 on him. He wouldn't drink the liquid, but he would lick my hands, the Renew 28. So I would put that on him and I rehabbed him myself in the pool and the dog was fine. Fixed the ACL.
I love the animal stories because there is no placebo in animals. They're not trying to please anybody. They can't be talked into it. It either works or it doesn't. And we see it do amazing things for animals, anything with a cell. So yeah, that's it. How did your dog tear its ACL though?
I'm not sure. He did a lot of, she would sprint and side and vertical and very active and, was really, really fast. Not like my other golden retriever before Kylie. Everyone said your dog is the most unathletic dog we've ever seen. Kylie was very athletic. And so I don't know how, but all of a sudden, she started limping and then limping more. And so we took her in and they said, oh no, she tore her ACL. And I went to several different doctors because I thought, oh, they just want to do surgery. But I decided we were going to do it. And remember in Texas last year, we had the big freeze here. And so the clinic where the surgery was going to happen was closed down. So they rebooked it for another month. And by this time, I'm just doing exactly how I would rehab my athletes. Instead of walking 2 miles a day, we'd walk 200 meters and walk 200 meters back and go up a couple steps, down a couple steps, and just massage that Renew 28 in her knees. And I do both of them because I figured, not only that, but her hips and her lymph areas, because she was putting more pressure on the leg that wasn't hurting. So I always do everything bilaterally. If one knee hurts, I do them both. I put the Renew 28 on my own carotid artery, my vagus nerve, my pulse points. I put it on my knees every day, my shoulders every day, my face. See how beautiful. No, just kidding. I use it all the time. So that's what I did on Kylie, and they couldn't believe it. Doctors couldn't believe it. I rehabbed her. So it took the same amount of time or not. I mean, it would have taken longer, I think, with the surgery and much more difficult, but we just didn't let her out without a leash on for a while, until sort of wanted chasing a squirrel or doing something like that. But yeah, she 100%. Doctors couldn't believe it.
I'd like to follow up with Luca because he needs to finish up here with us as well. You mentioned earlier that you went from like endurance focus to more of the short stuff that you said that Rose was making you do.
Yeah.
So
he bends, Luca. He goes, the intensity of Rose's workouts.
Yes.
Kendra, stand up for me.
I caught that. So can you just quickly contrast that, the difference between just like the short track and field stuff versus endurance stuff?
Yeah, just mainly it's a difference in muscle fiber. You're using fast twitch muscles for the anaerobic, sprinting up hills or doing like a 250 meter sprinting rep. So that's using the fast twitch fibers, which coming from an endurance background, it's like playing with fire essentially. So it's nice to have reassurance that your muscles are going to hold up during a session like a sprinting session. So yeah, that's the main difference. Just
you're going to be producing a lot more horsepower per repetition. You're going to have a lot less rest. You're going to be running the system in a much more acidic environment. You're going to be really, it's a two universes that are absolutely different. And so what we'll do, Lee, is we'll give you an opportunity to experience both the distance and the sprint, and we can come back in 6 weeks and you can tell us what the difference is all about.
And I'll watch. I'll cheer.
But the point there is that either universe that you're in, when the cells work better, you're going to have all the benefits that we've been talking about.
Yeah, exactly. It's the same material, but it's allowing that beautifully organized and infinitely sort of intelligent system to have the tools to do what it was built to do. And and you use a little common sense. So I'll close this out.
Yeah, close it out real quick. You got 1 minute, Jerry. Why should everybody take a look at this?
Because I think that this particular snapshot has been fabulous. Some great people with some really huge sort of genetic freaks here that can do things other people will never dream of in their whole lifetime. But all of us have to remember a concept as we coach and we work with athletes and we work with the young, called post-Olympic letdown, where the greatest moments in your life often occur when you're in your late teens, early 20s, into your 30s from an athletic standpoint, but you're going to live a lot longer after that. So to take care of what you have is important to do. But this concept called post-Olympic letdown is a part of everybody's life. Imagine that if you were to be in their shoes and you get to a point where you're 28, 29, 30 years old, you're in front of 3 billion people on one day. You have to ask yourself, after this in my life, what will be inspiring? Mm-hmm. And as a coach, we need to start working in helping each other understand, and our athletes understand 3 and 4 years before that, about what it means to be interconnected with other human beings, to make a difference, to be able to continue to inspire at the level that your life is at from this point forward. So the information that we take from here is interesting, but only just a very small, minuscule piece of what it's like to be involved with a group of people who are working on things for the positive. We come together as a group of human beings and share in different categories, not just this. We have many others, where each person contributes, makes a difference. And we live in a world today where we're all being separated and we're all being individualized, and we become weaker, we become less capable, and we make less difference in the world. So I want to try to say, let's take ASEA to the next level. Let's take these athletic concepts and build on the ideas of hope and human emotions and making a difference in what we can all do together. And thank you all for being with us. We'll keep throwing out some of these things. It's just fascinating, but we need all of you to give us the stories to make it happen. And back to you, Jim, to close and
Awesome.
Tell them what's up next.
Yeah, thank you, Jerry. So guys, we do this because we care. We do this, Luca and Kendra, thank you. Lee and Tom Beasley, thank you so much. These stories are so important because we're all going to do one thing. We're all going to age. And I want to age better. I played basketball in college. I blew out my back. I was addicted to pain pills. And today I'm not. I've got my life back. And so when someone shared this with me 7 years ago, it gave me hope. And guys, you're young, Kendra and Luca, guess what? You are going to age. And as you age, those old injuries that you thought were never going to come back up, they're going to come back up. Right, Mr. Beasley? And so, guys, we want to be able to cope with that and deal with that. That's what happened to me. So this coming Friday, guys, in 2 days, we have another show. We are the ASEA 5. Thank you so much, Maureen and Lee, for doing this. We will have Donalyn Dominguez, who is a midwife. And her life-changing story and what she has done with young mothers and fathers and children is rather remarkable. So please join us this coming Friday, same channel on discoverasea.com. It will be at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock Eastern. So with that, guys, thank you so much. This recording will be available on Lee Osler's amazing site, www.redoxmatters.com. It'll be up probably within about an hour, hour and a half. So thank you, guys. God bless. Appreciate it.
Love you guys. See you in a couple minutes.
Take care.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Rose, for letting us come into your house and eat all your food.
Yeah. You're welcome.
Awesome.
Hey, thanks.
See you guys. Bye.
Bye, Luca.
Thanks, Mr. Beasley.
Good to know.
Thank y'all. Bye-bye.
Great to see you, Tom.